Diana Summers? Ms. Summers? I heard her online earlier. I'll come back and try one more time. Leah Oliveri?
Present.
Lee Trujillo?
Present.
John Balls?
Present.
Alan Wilson? City Manager Peter Zanoni is here, and Assistant City Attorney Amy Alcorn-Reed. So we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm going to be like 3 feet back. Public comment for the Type A board. Would anybody like to make a public comment at this time? We'll open it up for public comment. Okay, hearing none. Have we received any public
Written
comment?
public comment? No, sir, we have not.
Okay. Item D on the agenda is our minutes from our meeting on July 19th. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the motion carries. Financial report. Ms. Heather?
Good afternoon, Board and Chairman. Heather Hurlbert, Director of Finance. We'll pull the presentation up. Next slide, please. Okay. We'll begin the board with the report on the Seawall Fund, and this is the financial position after the 9 months ended June the 30th. So we are ending this is for the first 3 quarters of the year. So we began the fiscal year 21 with a fund balance of $44.7 million. We received revenues year to date of $5.7 million. Our expenditures year to date are $21.9, and that is primarily made up of $2.5 million for debt service payments and then a $19.2 million transfer to CIP for the approved projects. That does leave us a fund balance, ending fund balance as of June 30th of $28.5 million. Next slide, please.
Excuse me. This type B? Type A?
A.
Oh. Thank you. Sorry, Heather.
That's okay.
It's been a long time since I've been here.
Can I ask a quick question about the Seawall Fund? Because I got it from
Yes,
somebody.
ma'am.
So I think you said 2024 is, 2024, 2025 is when it's.
2026.
26, okay,
Yes.
2025. I had the question come to me, I know we've asked this before, but could we go to the voters sooner and pay off the bonds and switch that money to a broader scope?
I'll let Amy answer that for you.
It's going to depend on the cost of paying the bonds early, and I know Constance did that research previously, and I don't recall
Yeah, I couldn't
what she
remember.
determined
I
was
think-
when we could pay them off.
I think we can pay them off. I mean, I don't know what we get out of it, but it was just something to maybe think about, that we could go to the voters. I guess it would now be 2022 and gain a few years back on it. Maybe it's something that the city manager has thought of, but
Well, what, Scott, can I jump in?
Yeah, since we're on this
Okay, thanks.
subject, but
But once you pay off the bonds, the tax goes away.
well, you'd go just like we did with AB. You'd go to the voters and ask for reauthorization to use that sales tax in another way, maybe for drainage throughout the area or stormwater protection or whatever people want to do. And then the second part of that would be ending the current sales tax.
so,
Yeah, you
so
gotta
since
time it right.
since we're on the financial report right now, why don't we add this
That's all I had.
as a future
It was
agenda
a
item
financial
to look
question
into?
for
No, it is.
the bonds are, yeah,
I appreciate you bringing that up.
okay.
Thank you.
Sure. And we'll add that to the list for a future
Okay.
item. Great. So then on the Arena Fund, for the 9 months ended June 30th, the beginning fund balance at the beginning of the fiscal year was $16.5 million. Revenues to date of $5.7 million. Our expenditures to date are $5.4 million, and that is primarily $4.8 million that is transferred to the Visitors Facility Fund for those portions of the expenses at the arena that are responsible of the city, and then about almost $400,000 in debt service. That leaves us an ending fund balance of $16.8 million. Next slide, please. So then looking at the Economic Development Fund, so just a reminder, the Economic Development Fund is not receiving any further revenues besides interest. It's not receiving any of the sales tax revenues. So we began the year with a $6.3 million fund balance. We've received about $3,000 in revenues year to date from interest earnings. Our expenditures year to date are $1.4 million, and that is primarily for major business incentives that have been paid out of $647,000, and then $423,000 that has been paid year to date for the small business projects, and those are primarily those contracts that we have in place. That leaves us a total fund balance of $4.8 million. And then our total outstanding commitments are $3.7 million, leaving us a balance available for $1.1 million in commitments. Next slide, please. So looking at our affordable housing commitments, we have pretty much the Home Buyer Assistance Program has been spent in full. There's a small amount balance listed that is remaining. We have the Fish Pond Development and then the Community Development Corporation of Brownsville, and those commitments are expected right now to be paid out in no earlier than 2022. Next slide, please. The major business initiatives, we have 3 outstanding, one to the International Consultant Engineers, another one to Texas A&M Civil and Industrial Engineering Project, and then the Del Mar College Foundation for their process and instrumentation technology. Those, we do have some remaining payments that we anticipate for 2021, and then we have commitments into 2023 on those projects. Next slide, please. And then we have our small business projects, which are primarily those annual contracts that we entered into with our partners for small business development, different types of small business development. Next slide, please. And we do have updated, we have 10 out of our 12 months that we've received sales tax for. The 2 months that are showing in red are estimates, but right now we are estimated to end the year a little over $1 million to the good. Just a reminder, we did budget very conservatively due to the timing of when we did the budget, and so our actuals have come in much higher than what we anticipated due to our rebounding a lot more quickly than what we thought from the COVID crisis. That does conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any additional questions from the board?
I have a question.
John?
Thank you, Scott. Heather, I may have asked it before, but what's the status of the LIFT fund? I see there's still a little bit of money left in there.
So that is, so that LIFT fund that you're seeing on there is the contract, and that is for the interest buy-down program.
Okay.
And so that is it's an annual contract we have with them. I believe that is on the agenda today, that we're recommending that we enter into another year worth of funding for that.
Okay.
Any remaining money on these contracts will roll back into the fund balance, and then we enter into new contracts with them on an annual basis.
Okay. Is it being utilized? Are people using the buy-down program?
I believe that due to a lot of the funding that's available through COVID, there has not been a lot of activity, is my understanding, through LIFT Fund, because there's been other funding sources, and so people have not been utilizing the buy-down program as much as in the past.
Do we need to, that was my thinking, is that do we need to eventually look at it and see if there's a better use of that money somewhere else? If it's just sitting there and people aren't accessing the program, then there's no point.
Yeah. I think that Mike Culberson can speak a little bit better to that. I know that he's going to be talking a little bit about those ongoing programs, and he may have some suggestions for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, that concludes the report. Thank you. We'll move to regular agenda items. Number 3 is our resolution authorizing enrollment in the Texas class and Texas class government investment pools.
It is last time.
Do we want to do 3, 4, and 5 all? Well, 3 and 4 both together.
You could do that, yes. And these had already been presented. We presented them last month to the Type A board, but inadvertently left them off the Type B agenda last month.
Okay.
So,
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve item 3 and item 4.
Okay. We have a motion to approve and a second to, for 3 and 4. Is there any additional comments or discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the motion passes.
Was that you,
easy.
Miss? Did you hear Miss Summers?
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Barely, but yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Item 5 on the agenda is a small business incentive agreement with Delmar, $150,000 for their small business development center.
Mike Culbertson with your Corpus Christi Regional EDC with good news. Now, as tough as COVID has been and as fits and starts, this board has always been a big supporter of small business assistance. Remember those, in fact, in Type A, it's in your guidelines and it talks about small business assistance, and I want to thank you for that. This one is now, the next one you'll see where we do a lot of renewals, but this one was a one-off. Remember when we did this in after the session in 19, and we had renewed it, and so now to get us through this last year of the Type A, we're actually going to have to come back and get a new agreement, and this will be for a one-year agreement. All right. So this is for the Small Business Development Center for the counselors. Remember, they had been docked, and even this session, they did not get their funding back. And I want to applaud you because of the, by approving this in the previous years and hopefully this year. Could you imagine trying to go through COVID without? I have Ann Farova, the director for the Small Business Development Center here. Can you imagine trying to go through with like 2 counselors instead of 5 and going through all of that? Now they didn't do the PPP or the EDL or things like that, but they certainly helped walk people through, answer their questions, get them directed, get them moving in the right direction. The EDC supports this, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and we recommend approval.
Thanks, Mike. Question from Mr. Valls?
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
John,
Because it's a separate one. The other ones actually had in their agreements that you had passed in the previous year a one-year renewal that the board could do. This one was separate. This one had come out, from the separate part. Remember, we only added it like 2 years ago.
Right.
And so it had one, and then it had a renewal, and so we've used the renewals up. And so we need to, that agreement, it terminates automatically, and we're coming to you for a new one.
Is there a way, because this is almost housekeeping or a legacy contract, and it's for a great cause at Delmar, and I see them a little further down too, but is there a way to basically put options or just automatic extensions or something so we don't have to keep doing it this way?
Understand, we had that, but for this one, the Type A is running out. We're running, we're bargain basement, everything must go, so so we're doing this in Type A. The next time you'll see this, hopefully, is Type B, and we'll talk a little bit about that in Type B, but the last time you'll see this is Type A. So Type A should be 0 at the end. Of course, whatever is not used in the small business this year or next year, and if there's anything left over from the Delmar Process Technology or the A&M, civil and industrial, then that will come back into the Type A general fund, and you will be able to do with what you want.
Okay, good enough, thank you.
All right, sir.
Ms. Olivari?
No, go ahead.
Ms. Oliveri, can you turn your mic on?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the state ever going to pick up funding for this?
Probably not. Ann, could you come up and?
I mean,
Yeah.
if it's forever, then maybe we should know it's forever. Huh?
So, I will tell you that I think one of the problems is, the state had funded it, and now they're pushing down to UTSA as the funder for all of these, and I'll let Ann Farova.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your consideration. The state funding, this is still a strategic plan item for not just our region, but also the entire state of Texas SBDCs.
Okay.
to go back to, they're continuing to go back to the legislature to restore that funding. That is still an ongoing effort. Yes, ma'am.
So I think to follow along on that, what happened? I mean, it never made it in a bill. I mean, it didn't make it to the bill, obviously.
It's a
Did it go to
pretty
committee
involved
at all?
process, and they have to have, this is a funding that comes down through universities, and so
Uh-huh.
each one of those universities has to be willing to go forward and say, we want to get restored to that level. And
So
it's
did it ever
marshaling
make
all
to a
those
committee,
folks.
or is it just never even getting into committee discussion?
I don't know how far into committee it's gotten. I'd have to check with my regional director on that. But it has gotten there, but I'm not sure how far it's gotten in consideration the last legislature.
And I'll tell you what my broader concern is, and it kind of carries over to exactly what Mike said, and I was thinking about it after our last meetings, is, you know, we've had this A money that we have continued to use, but the end is, you know, and somewhere we need to do a kind of spending plan that brings some of the worthwhile projects we've been funding out of A into B, because, or recognize that we're going to have to get rid of them, one of the two. So I think that's something we should be thinking about and strategizing on as a board, and then as
And we
as a
will
city council.
in item 6.
Yes, but things like this, I mean, I see item 6, but, you know, we've got a bigger,
Understand.
and then I guess the third thing, Ann, is, I don't know that I'll be here, but maybe there's a way we could be enlisted to help at the legislative level, too, saying, hey, we've been funding this locally, we think it's a great program,
Right.
we really think it's a state responsibility, we've lost some of the funding, you know. Anyway, just something for y'all to think
Yeah,
about.
and I'll pass that along to my regional director that actually heads up that effort at the state legislature
Right.
level, in concert with the other regional directors. And I can find out
Talk
if
to
there's
Chairman Hunter
an
and-
optimum opportunity for us to incorporate some language
Right.
from the board here.
Letter, or, yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'll let
thank
you know that Ms. Keys, the COO, that has been on Del Mar's legislative agenda for the last 2 sessions.
But we've never really had a legislative agenda, so that might be something
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we could put on, yeah.
And it's, and just so you remember, it was in your budget last time we met.
Right.
So.
Mr. Chairman,
Hold on one second. Lee, did you? Okay. Alan?
I was just going to say, letters of support locally can be very effective. I'm kind of thinking that the local bankers would sign off because many of our small business customers end up benefiting from those services.
Yes.
So when the time is right, you might think about that also.
We're always a year away, right?
Any other questions for Mike on item number 5?
I make a motion to approve?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Valls, second by Mr. Trujillo. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Item 6 is our renewals for
These are
Lift Fund,
the, Mike
SCORE.
Culbertson with the Economic Development Corporation, good news. And I want you to know you passed the budget on this, but, you know, each one of them, you know, I have them all here. I have Laura here, I have Ann here, I have Ms. Mills here from A&M. You know, they know it's important, they know it's important to their clientele. To discuss what we had been discussing offline, what are we going to do about type B and which ones, you know, what are we going to do? I mean, I know there's a point where you go, how many times are we going to fund this? If we don't fund it, will it go away? Is there another funding source? So one of the things that we are doing in an effort, and all of us here are doing in an effort, we're getting together a survey for small businesses. I know this is kind of the worst time to do it, and we're not talking about a survey where, you know, SurveyMonkey goes out and hits, you know, 4,000 people. There used to be a great database in the state did, but, you know, they don't fund it anymore, called Socrates. And you could download and find every single city, and every single company in the city, and there would be like 8,000 small businesses, of which 4,000 had one employee or no employees. Like my wife, who wrote textbooks, you know, she had a business, but, you know, she obviously didn't you know, every day she went to A&M as a professor. So we are looking for and sharing, not sharing databases, but we are setting for one where we will push out this survey. And I got to tell you, one of the things we're looking at is, you know, just instead of, do you need this? Do you need this? What do you, you know, just sit out there and say, what are you? You know, restaurant, retailer, manufacturer, service. How many employees do you have, full-time and part-time? What are your problems? You know, because we don't want to put somebody in a box and we don't want to miss something. We're just, and, you know, the EDC will take ownership of parsing that, you know, that response. But until then, what we want to do is get to the next year, and the next year is for Lift Fund. You can see Lift Fund is lowered, Mr. Valls. Lift Fund's lowered because of, and one of the problems, and I have Laura here if you have additional questions, Laura Strada, I shouldn't say Laura, Mrs. Strada here. And, but basically what's happening is there's so much, there is government help out there that they're pushing people toward it and using. So they've used probably 14,000 of their this year, and then of course all that will come back. Of course they have until September 30th. So we understand that there's problems, and so we've lowered some. We've lowered, you know, on the internships are both 100,000, you know, to try to better match them. Of course, the internships have had trouble. While A&M's done well, you know, filling their internships, they've been getting less hours. So, you know, they're finding the people, they're finding the businesses, they're finding the students, they're matching them well. And when they match them, you know, I go through and I make sure that they're doing. But they're just getting less hours. So, you know, there's not a lot we can do about that. Although, you know, the small business still has the ability to use those. And then, of course, PTAC and Contract Resource Center. PTAC is actually doing quite well. Contract Resource Center's not so well. We're working on that, and Ann and I and Ms. Keys are trying to brainstorm some of those things. So this is in the budget you passed last time. The EDC recommends approval, and I stand by for any questions.
Any questions from the board on item 6? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes.
And I will keep you updated on our survey as it goes through. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Zanoni, before we get to executive director comments, in previous agendas, we had an item down here after the executive director comments for future agenda items. It was basically a way for the board members during our meeting to provide input on items that we wanted to see on future agendas. Is there a reason why that's been removed from our agendas, or is it just kind of an administrative item that we didn't feel was necessary?
Mr. Harris, it was removed, council, so the city council, we used to have that item on TERS board agendas and corporation agendas, and they asked that item be removed because there is a process for board members to put items on the agenda without that. So I think your policies, what do you call them, your procedures, your rules of procedure for this board give you a way to do that. So either you can put it on, city manager, or I believe it's two of them, two board members can place an item on an agenda. So since there's a process, it was the per council direction, we removed it.
For the benefit of the board, can you remind us again what that process is? I know there are two board members, but is
Yes,
it
and
an
I think
email? Is it, how do we get something on the agenda? It seems like there's been stuff that's missed in the last couple of agendas. That's why I'm asking. So what's the procedure for us to get something on there?
I know for council, it's in writing. You submit it in writing to the city secretary. I don't think it's done to the city secretary for this board, though. I'm not,
No, it's
I
listed
haven't
as
seen it in
city
a while.
manager, but it's city manager or designee, so it would be either Randy or Constance, I would think.
Okay.
They can give it, yeah, so they,
Yeah, we can't copy everybody on a,
Not us.
oh, on them, yeah.
You're free to copy all staff on anything. It's the Open Meetings Act
Okay.
only applies to board members.
Okay, in writing, like a written letter, or is it an email?
email's
Does-
fine. I
Email's
mean, as long
fine.
as it's in
Email's
writing,
fine?
and it has just clearly stating what it is you want added, whether
Okay.
that's an action item or whatever. And in time for posting, right? It needs to, if you want it on a specific agenda, you would say, and it has to be in time
Okay.
for,
I believe the
posting
rules
purposes.
specifically say 7 days before the meeting,
okay,
but yeah, it has to be in time for posting, or we just can't add it because it's too late.
to that agenda, yeah.
Okay. Very well.
And we can, if y'all don't have the rules of procedure, I can send those out, or staff can, so you're aware, to familiarize you with that process, because it is in your rules of procedure.
Okay. Very well. John, did you have a,
I did.
okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Rebecca, if you could email that, I would like a copy of it. I would
Sure,
imagine the board
of
would too.
course.
Because what is the role, Mr. Zanoni, of the board president? Typically, boards that I've served on, the presiding officer has a significant degree of oversight and control of the agenda.
right,
So
that's
if the
applies
board
here.
officer, if the presiding officer requests an item or delete an item, then that's
Right, and
usually
we,
followed.
but that's part of what Rebecca said, the city secretary. So if the chair of the type A or B, it's the same person in this case, asked for something to be put on the agenda, we'll put it on. We have not done that.
Do you, as a matter of procedure or courtesy, well, this is a question for Scott too, have an agenda review with the presiding officer so that that person can know what's coming on the agenda, or, hey, I don't think we're ready for this, strike this,
Yes.
or?
Yeah, the answer is yes on that. We
Yeah.
do.
I get to see the agenda a few days. Randy will send it to me.
And you have the ability to approve the agenda, correct?
That's why it's sent to me.
Right, okay, so
Yes.
that's what I'm getting at, is that
Yeah.
the presiding officer approves the agenda, so he knows what's on there before it gets published, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yeah, the issue with that future agenda items, it began with city council, and we applied it at their direction to all the TERSs and these two boards, is that things at the end of the council meeting, it was usually the last item, were just kind of placed on the agenda, which we polled other Texas cities, and no other city does anything like that. So what the general protocol is as stated in the charter and other governing documents, is that the city manager or the mayor can set things on the council agenda.
Right,
And then if there's a will of certain council members, then is it a 4-signature memo? Yeah, 4 signatures are required. A
Put an item
written
on.
memo is provided to, in this case, the secretary with 4 signatures, and then that can place something on the agenda too. However, that 4-signature memo can't dictate time, like they can't say, I want it on next week's agenda. That's for the mayor and the manager to decide. And so we carried that same practice, which is best practice across Texas, here to the type A and type B boards, as well as to the TERS boards. We have 4 of those. Is it 4 or 5? 4. So
okay.
just to be consistent in our business practices, it applies to all our boards.
Okay, and so here it's 2 members.
3, maybe,
So here
It's 2. It was drafted before this board had 7 members, so it's 2.
3.
2. It was drafted when the board only had 5, so 3 would have been a quorum at the time.
Okay, or the president of the board can put an item on, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're good, Leah?
Yeah, I just want to know the number of, it's 2 or 3, I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Along those same lines, what's the protocol for calling a special meeting?
I don't recall that one off the top of my head, but it's also in those rules that she sends out, so you'll be able to see it then.
So
I
the
can't remember
board-
if it's the same number. I know the president can call one. I can't remember if it's the same number of board members or if there's a different number.
So the board president can call a special meeting? And that would be done like now, during a meeting, or at any time?
I've done it other times, not just during the meeting.
Yeah, I think we usually do it outside the meeting, and and it has to be a certain amount of time in advance, because we have to make sure the room's available and get everything set up, but yeah, we have done special meetings, and we can continue to do them as long as we have enough time to post agendas and get a room.
Okay, thanks, everyone. So we'll move to item I now, Executive Director comments.
Yeah, thank you. No comments for this board, but for the type B, we'll make some comments.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you, sir. So with that, the time is now 2:04 PM, and I'll call this meeting to adjournment. The B Corporation will start at 2:30.